I never thought I'd see a woman in a floral kimono wielding a selfie stick and screaming at a heron to move for the aesthetic, but there she was standing in the middle of my quiet fishing dock like she owned the lake. And in that ridiculous moment when she threw my bait bucket into the water because it was ruining her vibe, I realized my sanctuary had just been hijacked by the loudest nightmare in town. The worst part, she didn't even know I owned the land she was trespassing on. That was the moment I knew. Karen had declared war, and she didn't even know I had already won it. For the past 7 years, I had found peace in this one special spot at the lake. It wasn't famous or marked on any tourist map. Just a small wooden dock built by my uncle, nestled behind a cluster of cottonwoods at the edge of the lake. After retiring from the fire department, I'd come here almost every morning before sunrise, armed with a thermos of black coffee, a chair older than my truck, and a tackle box that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. The lake didn't care how many fires I'd pulled bodies from. It didn't judge me when I sat in silence for hours. It just existed, quiet and patient, like the therapy I never had to schedule. The quiet mattered more than anything else. After the kind of years I'd had, pulling people out of burning wrecks, dragging friends from collapsing roofs, the silence became sacred. No cell signal, no politics, no traffic, just the occasional splash of a fish or the creak of a dock plank shifting under my boot. This was the one place the chaos didn't follow me. Until it did. That morning, the air had the kind of chill that hinted summer was over. Fog curled like ghosts over the lake, the surface still and reflective. I had just reeled in a decent-sized bass, and was preparing to release it when I heard something that didn't belong. A loud pop song blared from a Bluetooth speaker, followed by screeching laughter and the unmistakable thunk of champagne bottles hitting a plastic cooler. Then came the voices. Dozens of them. Through the fog, a pack of women in neon workout gear and oversized hats materialized like a pastel-colored flash mob. Folding chairs hit the grass. A yoga mat unfurled across the dock. And then she stepped into view. Karen. I didn't know her name yet, but you could just tell. The overly confident stride. The clipboard. The air of someone who demanded to speak to life's managers. She glanced at me like I was a misplaced lawn ornament and said loudly to her group, "Ugh, this hobo fisherman is ruining our retreat." I stood there, still holding the fish, staring at them like I'd just stumbled into an alternate dimension. She walked up, eyed my setup, and waved a manicured hand in my direction. "This is a private event," she said. "You'll have to move. We have a sunrise yoga and mimosa session scheduled here." I blinked. "Ma'am, this is my dock." She laughed like I told her the moon was mine. "No, this is community space. I cleared it with the HOA. We're reclaiming it for public use. You can fish somewhere else. Or better yet, go home. You smell like bait." That last line landed like a slap. Not because of the insult, but because of how confident she was while standing on a dock that I built with my uncle when I was a teenager. This wasn't just some spot on a lake. This was where I grieved the friends I lost in the fire, where I taught my son how to cast a line, where I first kissed my wife after her chemo ended. This was not a place someone could just show up and take. I tried reason first. "Ma'am, this land isn't part of the HOA. It's private property. I've owned it for years." Karen's eyes narrowed. "That's not what my map says. And I don't see a sign anywhere. Sounds made up. You're just trying to scare people off." Before I could respond, she clapped twice and shouted, "Ladies, it's time for group poses, everyone to the dock." Suddenly a flood of sandal-wearing, overly perfumed women marched across the dock like an army of Instagram influencers. One of them knocked over my tackle box. Another stepped on my rod. Karen had the audacity to ask one of her friends to snap a photo of her, reclaiming nature from toxic masculinity. I didn't yell, didn't push back. I just packed my things and walked away. But I wasn't done. Later that day, I stopped by the county office. I pulled out the deed and had them make 5 fresh copies. I ordered new signage from a local printer. Waterproof. bright red. Legally worded. Then I called my lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue, yet, but because I wanted everything documented from the start. I returned the next morning to find glitter in the water, empty mimosa bottles floating like dead fish, and my chair tossed in the lake. Karen had gone too far. She wasn't just entitled. She was destructive. I planted my new signs into the ground. Private property, no trespassing, HOA has no jurisdiction. Clear. Bold. Final. But of course, Karen wasn't done either. Later that week, I received a notice from the HOA, an official-looking envelope with a seal and a 3-page list of violations. Fishing on community land without authorization. Leaving behind hazardous materials. Creating a nuisance by occupying space, meant for peaceful recreation. It was absurd. But it meant one thing: Karen had escalated this to full-on war. What she didn't know, what she hadn't even thought to check, was that I had more than ownership. I had leverage. I knew every law, every regulation, every easement line. And most importantly, I had options. She thought she could bully me into disappearing. She thought I was just some old man with worms and a rod. What she didn't realize was that the dock she invaded wasn't just mine, it was the fuse she lit on something far louder than she could ever scream over. And that sound was coming. Soon. The first sign Karen wasn't just some delusional weekend warrior, but a full-blown tyrant in yoga pants came when I found a brand new chain across the path to my dock. It wasn't some flimsy ribbon or caution tape. It was a thick steel chain padlocked to 2 rebar posts she'd hammered into the ground. And dangling from that chain, swinging slightly in the morning breeze, was a laminated sign with big block letters. Private event zone authorized by HOA. Trespassers will be reported. I stared at it for a good 10 seconds, trying to decide if I was more impressed by the speed of her madness or the sheer audacity it took to block a man from his own land. I didn't cut the chain. Not yet. I took pictures. Close-ups of the sign, the posts, the chain. I even recorded a video walking up to it, narrating the whole thing with a calm voice, noting the GPS coordinates and panning to the shoreline marker that clearly showed my parcel boundary. It wasn't just about getting her off my land anymore. I knew people like Karen. They thrived on chaos and attention, but they collapsed under cold facts and paperwork. So I started building my case. A few days later, I received another letter from the HOA, this time on official letterhead. It claimed I was violating community space decorum, and warned that further infractions could lead to legal consequences or fines. The kicker was the line at the bottom. Please be advised that further noncompliance may lead to suspension of all HOA privileges. I almost laughed. I didn't live under their HOA. My house, my land, even the mailbox stood just outside their jurisdiction. That's what made this entire stunt so ridiculous. Karen had marched in with her entitled clipboard energy and just decided to extend imaginary borders. I wasn't about to let that go unanswered. I made copies of every document I had, deed, property map, county plat records, and delivered them in person to the HOA office. The receptionist looked bored until she saw the address. Then her eyes widened slightly, and she called someone from the back. A man in a too-tight golf shirt and khakis came out. He looked like the human embodiment of HOA policy. I introduced myself, handed him the folder, and said plainly, "Your new president is trying to annex private land. This folder proves she's committing civil trespass and filing false community claims. If this doesn't stop, my lawyer will be contacting yours." He didn't say much, just nodded and took the documents. But I could see the concern brewing. He knew this was bigger than a petty neighborhood dispute. He knew Karen was walking them into liability territory, and I just handed him the loaded gun. But Karen, predictably, doubled down. That weekend, I came down to the dock early. I wanted to beat whatever performance she had planned for the day. But even I wasn't prepared for what I found. Someone had draped a giant white sheet over the dock, decorated with fake vines and dollar store decor. A plastic arch stood at the end, and a sign read, "Welcome to Tranquility Bay, HOA Wedding Prep Space." There were folding chairs lined up in rows, a Bluetooth speaker already playing heart music, and coolers full of champagne with labels that said Bride Tribe. And standing there, directing the chaos with a walkie-talkie like she was commanding a battalion, was Karen. I walked right up to her. "What is this supposed to be?" She turned, beaming like she'd just pulled off the social event of the year. "We're doing a test run for my daughter's wedding. We're repurposing this land as a community venue. It's going to be so rustic and charming. You should be happy. This will raise your property value." I pointed at the dock. "That's my dock. On my land. You don't have permission to be here." Karen rolled her eyes. "You keep saying that. But unless you have a giant neon sign or a laser wall or whatever, how are people supposed to know it's not public? I filed trespassing reports. I gave your board evidence. You are on record now." Her smile faltered for half a second. "Well, then, I guess we'll see what the county says about a man harassing women during a sacred family moment. You're making everyone uncomfortable." I stepped back, phone in hand, recording everything. "I'm not here to harass. I'm here to document. Keep doing what you're doing. I want this on file." She turned back to her minions and hissed something I didn't catch. But that moment made it clear. This wasn't going to end with a conversation. Karen was operating like a wannabe queen, and she didn't think rules applied to her. So I decided to play the long game. The next few days I avoided the dock. Instead, I started working my network. A buddy of mine from the fire department had gone into drone photography. I asked him to fly over and get high-res footage of the dock, her setup, the decorations, and all the people trespassing. He captured everything. Even got a few shots of Karen pouring wine into the lake and her guests tossing cigarette butts into the water. Environmental violations, public safety issues, documented. All time-stamped and geotagged. I also called a real estate contact of mine. Just a casual chat at first. But I asked a pointed question. If someone had a lakeside parcel just outside HOA control, big enough for a small facility with road access, think there'd be any buyers? He laughed. I've got seafood companies begging for that kind of space. Cold storage plants, packaging hubs. You name it. I didn't make the call official. Not yet. But the idea lodged in my mind like a hook in a gill. If Karen wanted this spot so badly that she'd break the law to control it, maybe she deserved to lose more than just access. Maybe she needed a front-row seat to something she could never control. Something loud. Something permanent. By the end of that week, Karen escalated again. She posted a video online, calling me a dangerous squatter, and accusing me of intimidation. It didn't get much traction, just a few local moms giving her heart emojis, but it showed how far she was willing to go to play victim. She wasn't just stomping on boundaries. She was crafting a whole narrative to justify it. I spent that night on the porch, sipping coffee and staring at the lake. In the moonlight, I could see the reflection of the dock. Empty for now. But not for long. I had tried reasoning. I had tried documentation. But if Karen wanted a war over my land, I was finally ready to end it on my terms. She thought she'd made the biggest move by stealing a fishing spot. She hadn't seen anything yet. The first real shift in the balance of this ridiculous power struggle came not with yelling or lawsuits, but with a map. A simple printed map from the county assessor's office, showing the precise boundaries of every parcel surrounding the lake. My land was clearly outlined in thick black ink, complete with coordinates, access rights, and the dock well within my property line. It was boring, bureaucratic, and utterly devastating to Karen's fantasy of HOA domination. I folded it neatly, placed it into a manila folder with every other legal document I had collected, and walked it over to the HOA's monthly board meeting like I was delivering a ticking time bomb. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a place that smelled like lemon-scented floor polish and passive aggression. I sat in the back at first, listening to agenda items about shrub height violations and approved mailbox designs. But then they opened the floor to community concerns, and I stood up. Karen, seated at the head of the table with a smug little smile, looked up from her tablet like I was an annoying fly she'd forgotten to swat. I walked to the center of the room and calmly placed the folder on the table. "This is for the board," I said. "It contains all the legal documentation proving that the parcel with the dock Karen has been using for parties, weddings, and fake events does not belong to the HOA. It is private property, mine. And I'm requesting this body immediately cease and desist from issuing any further statements or actions regarding it." There was a moment of silence, and then Karen scoffed. "That dock has always been part of the common area. That's what we were told. That's what the old maps said." I turned and looked her square in the eyes. "Show me those maps." She hesitated. "They're not on me." "But the principle." "The principle doesn't hold up in court," I interrupted. "The records I just gave your board are from the county. They override any old napkin sketches you may have inherited." One of the board members, a tired-looking man named Cliff, opened the folder and began flipping through the papers. His expression changed from boredom to concern almost immediately. This all checks out," he muttered. "This deed is still active. And this parcel isn't within HOA limits. He's not even a dues-paying member." Karen leaned forward. "So what? He's being hostile. He refuses to let the community enjoy the lake. He's making it unpleasant for everyone." I chuckled quietly. "Unpleasant for everyone? Or just for you?" She slammed her palm on the table. "He's ruining the view with his presence. His chair, his trash, his energy. It's aggressive." Another board member chimed in, a younger woman who clearly didn't care for the drama. "Karen, if it's his land, we don't have the authority to regulate it. We can't even send him violation letters. If we do, we're opening the HOA to legal action." Karen's lips tightened, her face flushed. "You're all missing the point. This affects the entire neighborhood. If we don't control that dock, anyone could do anything with it." I raised an eyebrow. "Like invite guests to drink and litter in a protected watershed? Or host events without permits? Or block a property owner from his own land?" The room went quiet again. Cliff looked over his glasses at Karen. "We'll need to review this in private. Thank you for bringing this, sir." That was all I needed to hear. I left the folder on the table and walked out, not bothering to look back. I knew Karen was squirming, and that was enough. But she wasn't done. Not even close. 2 days later, I saw her stomping along the edge of the lake with a tape measure and a teenager awkwardly holding the other end. She was muttering about property lines and trying to find some loophole she could exploit. I didn't bother engaging. I just sipped my coffee and watched as she angrily measured to the edge of my dock for the third time, as if her frustration could magically redraw a county map. The next blow came not from her but from the HOA itself. Cliff, the tired-looking man from the board, showed up at my door with a letter of apology. He said the board had officially ruled that the land and dock were outside their jurisdiction. They would no longer issue notices, fines, or make any claims. He handed me a printed statement to that effect, signed by all current board members, except Karen. She'd refused. Instead, she submitted a complaint accusing the board of collusion with a hostile landowner. I framed the apology letter and nailed it to the tree nearest the dock. Karen saw it the next day. She stood in front of it for several minutes, seething. Then she kicked over a tackle bucket I had left out and stormed off. That was her last outburst in person, but I could feel the wheels turning in her mind. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. She was the type to escalate, to burn things down if she couldn't own them. That was when I made my next move. I called up that real estate contact again. "Remember that conversation we had about a seafood plant?" He laughed. "You serious now? I'm ready to listen." He got the ball rolling fast. Within a week, a representative from a seafood distribution company came to inspect the land. They were thrilled. close enough to the main road, far from residential development, and with natural access to clean water for processing, everything they needed. Best of all, the noise and logistics of such a facility would fall well within zoning regulations for the parcel. I didn't tell them about Karen. I didn't need to. The sound of truck deliveries and industrial generators would do all the talking soon enough. I signed the preliminary agreements that afternoon. No longer just a lakeside landowner, I was now the future landlord of a commercial facility with forklifts, refrigeration units, and early morning truck routes. Karen had taken my piece, so I was giving her something much louder in return. That evening, as I walked down to the dock one last time before construction would begin, I saw Karen at the far side of the lake, binoculars in hand. She hadn't noticed the small red flags marking the ground or the painted stakes outlining the future foundation. But she would soon. And I couldn't wait to watch her reaction when she realized her dream wedding venue was about to become the noisiest corner of the entire county. It started with the sound of diesel engines roaring just after dawn. Not loud enough to shake windows, but enough to carry through the still morning air and settle into the bones of every house around the lake. I was already on my porch sipping coffee when the first truck rolled in, carrying fencing, foundation markers, and heavy equipment. The sun had barely crested the trees, and yet the sleepy lakefront was now alive with the rumble of progress. Karen's piece, the one she stole from me, was about to be shattered in a way she never could have imagined. The construction crew wasted no time. Within hours, they had cleared the decorative archway Karen had left behind and pulled up every folding chair she had jammed into the grass. Her dream venue was reduced to a muddy lot lined with fluorescent orange cones and caution tape. I watched from a safe distance, a quiet observer with the legal paperwork tucked safely in my glove box in case anyone questioned what was happening. But no one did. The plant manager, a sharp guy named Duke, had made all the calls. Permits had been processed. Inspections cleared. The zoning office had even fast-tracked the approval once they saw how isolated the parcel was. No residents directly adjacent. No wetlands. No rare birds. Just an angry woman across the lake with a garden full of attitude. Karen didn't show up until later that morning. I heard her before I saw her. Her SUV squealed to a stop near the HOA clubhouse, and within seconds she was stomping her way down the gravel path toward the dock, a wide-brimmed hat flopping with every furious step. She was yelling before she reached the caution tape, pointing at workers and demanding someone explain what was happening. Duke calmly walked up, hard hat tucked under his arm, and explained that they were breaking ground for a seafood cold storage and packaging facility. She froze, blinking, processing. Then she exploded. "You can't build that here. This is a natural space. A shared lake. This is a health hazard. This is environmental terrorism." I nearly choked on my coffee. Duke stayed calm. "Ma'am, we've cleared every regulation. This parcel is legally zoned for light industry. There's no restriction on truck traffic or refrigeration unit. We're well within decibel limit. Everything has been signed off by the county." Karen turned and pointed at me across the lake. "He did this. He's doing this to punish me. He's harassing me." Duke looked over at me and smiled. "Ma'am, we're just leasing from a property owner. Whatever grievances you have, I suggest you take them up with your HOA. This is now a commercial site. Please remain off the construction zone." She stood there, fuming, her fists clenched at her sides like a cartoon villain. And then, as if to punctuate her tantrum, she let out a shriek and kicked one of the cones over before storming off. Two of the workers just laughed and went back to pouring concrete. For them, she was just background noise. For me, she was the last puff of hot air before silence returned, at least for a moment. Over the next few days, the site transformed. The dock was preserved but reinforced with concrete footings. A modular office unit was brought in. Trenches were dug for water hookups and power. The road was widened slightly for delivery trucks. It all moved fast. Karen, meanwhile, didn't. Instead of confronting me again, she switched tactics. She began organizing her own personal protests. She printed flyers about preserving the lakefront beauty and shoved them into mailboxes. She even taped one to my door. I kept it as a souvenir. The next day, she stood at the community entrance with a handwritten sign that said, "Stop the fish factory," and tried to rally drivers. Most just waved or ignored her. A few honked, but not in support. She went further. Filed a noise complaint with the county claiming illegal early morning construction. It was dismissed. Our permits covered a 6 a.m. start time. Then she claimed the water being drawn from the lake was unsafe. The environmental team tested it and cleared it within hours. Finally, she demanded a town hall meeting to stop what she called the industrial invasion. But by then, the HOA had already washed their hands of the whole thing. One board member told me, half laughing, "You broke her with a freezer truck." And then the seafood arrived. The plant's soft launch began with limited deliveries. A few crates of shrimp, tuna, and crab legs came in by midweek, packed in dry ice and loaded into brand-new stainless steel refrigeration unit. A faint but distinct scent of brine settled in the air around the site. Not enough to gag anyone, but enough that Karen could smell it from her porch. She lost her mind. She started walking around in a painter's mask, complaining that the air was being poisoned. She posted a video online warning of fish vapor toxicity, which was promptly torn apart by the internet for its sheer absurdity. The comments section was brutal. Someone even auto-tuned her rant into a parody song. I may have played it a few times in my truck while fishing from the far side of the lake. At night, the lights from the facility glowed softly across the water. Nothing obtrusive, just low industrial lights and the occasional forklift beep. Karen began taping towels to her windows and complaining to the HOA about light pollution. But they no longer answered her emails. Her name had become a running joke in the minute. Karen would like us to ban moonlight, someone had said once. And everyone laughed. Eventually, she tried one final move. She called a lawyer. I got the letter a week later, accusing me of creating a nuisance and seeking mediation. My lawyer read it, laughed, and responded with one sentence. "This complaint holds no merit. Please familiarize your client with zoning code 7B before further contact." After that, silence. Except it wasn't silence. It was the humming of chillers, the thud of crates being loaded, the sound of progress, and the occasional background music from the plant's loading dock speakers. Fishermen's sea shanties, someone's idea of a joke. I didn't gloat. Not publicly. But every time I passed Karen's house and saw her glaring out the window, I couldn't help the smile that crept onto my face. She had tried to take something personal from me. Something peaceful and sacred. And now, all she had was the constant reminder that she lost. Not just the dock, but control. Authority. Relevance. The irony was perfect. She wanted to turn my quiet lake retreat into a public party ground. Instead, I gave her something truly public. Something regulated, permanent, and louder than she ever imagined. And the best part was yet to come. The grand opening of the plant was just a week away, with a ribbon-cutting ceremony planned and county officials invited. Karen didn't know it yet, but she was about to watch her former kingdom become the official seafood hub of the region. With her house stuck in the front row. The ribbon-cutting day arrived with the kind of buzz you'd expect from a county fair. Trucks lined the gravel road leading to the facility. County officials, business leaders, even a local news crew showed up to cover the grand opening of the region's newest seafood processing plant. A small tent had been set up on the edge of the property with refreshments, a sound system, and a podium decorated with red, white, and blue streamers. People milled about in casual dress clothes, taking selfies with the new logo backdrop and sampling fresh shrimp cocktails served on trays carried by polite staff. There were speeches, laughter, and the hum of industry behind it all, conveyors clanking softly, coolers humming with regulated chill. I stood near the dock, arms crossed, coffee in hand, watching the event unfold like someone watching the final move in a chess game already won. From where I stood, I had a perfect view of Karen's house across the lake. Her curtains were twitching with every movement. You could tell she wanted to be there, wanted to storm over and shut the whole thing down like she was the final boss of suburbia. But she didn't. Not today. Not after everything had failed. The trespassing letters. The fake HOA warnings. The media stunt. The protests. The towel-covered windows. None of it had worked. She'd lost. And now she was forced to sit in the front row for the show she helped create. When the county commissioner gave a brief speech, he pointed at the dock and thanked the property owner whose foresight and generosity allowed this economic hub to exist. I raised my hand casually when a few people turned to look, but I didn't wave or bask. It wasn't about pride. It was about principle. My dock, my land, my peace. She stole it. I didn't get revenge. I just reclaimed what was mine, and added refrigeration. The official ribbon was cut just before noon. A cheer went up from the crowd. The camera flashes went off. Someone cranked up a playlist and passed around fish tacos from the plant's side kitchen. And just as the celebration peaked, I noticed something at the edge of the lot, a figure moving through the trees in a wide sun hat and oversized sunglasses, ducking like a cartoon spy. Karen. She didn't approach the crowd, just stood there, maybe 20 yards from the tent, behind a large pine, peering out like a raccoon planning a raid. I watched her for a moment before casually turning away, pretending not to see her. If she wanted to watch, let her. She didn't deserve confrontation anymore. She had become background noise to her own disaster. Over the next few weeks, the facility shifted into full operational mode. Trucks came and went at all hours, especially in the early morning. Deliveries of fresh seafood. Departures of packaged product. The humming of machinery became a regular part of the landscape, not obnoxious, but noticeable. Especially to someone who had tried so hard to shape the lake into her own little palace of quiet brunches and curated Instagram moments. Neighbors began to change their tune too. At first, there were a few murmurs of complaint about the trucks or the smell of saltwater. But then they noticed something else: jobs. Several residents picked up shifts at the facility. Local businesses started receiving wholesale seafood at reduced prices. A couple of teenagers even got after-school loading work. Suddenly, the plant wasn't an intrusion. It was a benefit, and Karen's narrative of pollution and tyranny started to unravel fast. She tried again to rally the neighborhood, printed new flyers, accused the facility of environmental sabotage, claimed there was a gas leak. When the fire department came out to investigate, it was one of my old coworkers who responded. He took one look around, found nothing, and joked to me afterward that he half expected Karen to light a candle just to make the alarm go off. He marked it all down as a false report. After that embarrassment, Karen went quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The plotting kind. You could tell by the way her curtains stopped moving during the day and her porch light stayed on until well after midnight. She was trying to figure out what angle she had left. But the truth was there were none. The permits were locked in. The facility met every regulation. The community had turned against her. And the HOA board, having been burned by her drama already, refused to return her emails or hear her new motions. She was effectively sidelined, powerless, and slowly unraveling in her fish-scented exile. One evening, I decided to walk the lake. Not for any dramatic confrontation, just to enjoy the place I had once feared losing. The air was crisp. The moonlight reflected softly off the water. The plant hummed behind me, a low sound like a contented beast. As I passed Karen's house, I noticed something strange. Her garden, once so obsessively trimmed and manicured, had started to wilt, leaves curling, weeds sprouting along the brick edge. It was a small sign, but telling. She had stopped trying. Whatever spirit she once had, righteous or ridiculous, it had faded. And strangely, I didn't feel triumph. Not glee or satisfaction. Just closure. She had declared war on my peace, and in doing so, lost her own. I didn't beat her with anger or threats. I beat her with paperwork, timing, and the simple power of knowing when to escalate. It was a reminder that justice doesn't always come in dramatic fashion. Sometimes, it arrives in the form of forklifts, deadlines, and a steady stream of packaged trout. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, scrawled in slightly shaky handwriting. Inside was a single note. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I hope you enjoy your noisy little empire. I'll be selling the house. No name, but I knew the handwriting. It was bitter, petty, final. I folded the letter and tucked it away in the same file that held the land deeds and the old photos of the dock. Then I walked down to the lake, cast my line, and watched the reflection of the plant's soft lights shimmer across the water. I didn't hear her voice anymore. No yelling. No orders. Just the splash of fish and the steady purr of progress. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was balance restored. A lesson quietly delivered to someone who thought she could take without consequence. She wanted the lake for herself. I gave her the very thing she feared most. And now, with my peace reclaimed and the noise working in my favor, I could finally enjoy the silence in my head, even if the lake itself never slept again.